Perfect. Yeah, so Tomiwa is an amazing business coach. She helps women of color achieve their career goals and their business goals. She's also a Google startup mentor. And I'm going to leave her to introduce herself and tell us more about what she does. I'm seeing some comments in the chat. Yes, keep it coming. We'll go through that in a second. Thank you. So Tomiwa.
Hi everyone.
Hi.
Thank you so much for having me, Tommy, and hi everyone. Uh, my name is Tomiwa daSilva, and I'm a business coach, business consultant. I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm multi-passionate, so I do multiple different things. But the at the core of who I am, it's business coaching, business consulting. I also am a startup founder and mentor at Google, so it's not my full-time job. It's just something I do as an on an advisory, advisory board type basis. So I move around Europe training startups on marketing and sales. Marketing and sales is my expertise. So I know a lot of people say I'm a business coach, and there are different ways that people, coach others, and there are different things that people coach on. But my area of focus is marketing and sales. In terms of the journey to getting here, I worked in 9 to 5, so I think hence the topic. I worked a full time job for over a decade. I was in investment banking, management consulting for the better part of the last decade, and then I decided to kind of take the leap into full time entrepreneurship. Um, like Toyin said, I just saw Toyin's comment. I said one of the reasons, and I'll talk about that hopefully during this masterclass, but one of the reasons was because for me, the math wasn't mathing. Um, when I looked at the lifestyle of the people who were partners, who were, so I was a director. So when I say people who were partners and who were, much more senior, so then I say 10 years ahead of me, it just didn't seem like the lifestyle that I would want. It didn't seem like, the math wasn't mathing basically based when I looked at my vision board of the life that I desired. And I would then Google something like the salary of a partner at this bank or at this consulting firm. I was like, not really adding up. This salary cannot afford this, right? Based on the way that we're even taxed, and that's another conversation in the UK. But based on the way that we're taxed, this salary cannot, cannot match this lifestyle that I desire. And so I decided to kind of do something about that. Started with monetizing my expertise while I was in the job,
So
making money on the side while I was in the job, and then took the leap. So that's my very, very short. I made it as short as possible.
that's amazing. I love your comment of the math isn't mathing. Um, if when you said that when you realized that the math wasn't mathing, could you break that down in terms of what you were experiencing that made you feel like, okay, it's not adding up? Like, how wasn't it adding up for you?
Yeah. So I'm going to write things down just so I don't forget. I tend to talk about a category, and we've talked about it before, of Henry's, right? Where you're a high earner, but you're not rich yet. And so for me, I felt like I fell into that category because number one, I find that most people who are in senior roles, they're unable to do all of these three things: save, spend, and invest, right? Um, most times you find one person is a spender, the other person is a saver, and then maybe they will then both be investors as well. But you hardly find people who can do all three comfortably. So I found that in my career, in my corporate career, the years that I would save heavily and invest heavily, maybe we couldn't really go on holidays and I couldn't really treat myself, right? And I'm a child of God. I strongly believe that He, wants me to, like, He gives me the desires of my heart, And so if I desire some things, I'm not overindulgent, but I just found that I had to rob myself of certain things for certain things to happen. I wasn't able to eat my cake and have it. So that was the first thing for me where the math wasn't mathing. I worked so hard. We all work so hard in our various jobs, and I should be able to save, spend, but also invest my money, right? I should be able to, I know many people here are not. If we get down to the bones of it, we're not asking for too much, right? With that. So that was the first instance. And then the second instance, which is also a sign that you should be. So that's the first sign when you're not able to save, spend, and invest. That's the first sign that you should start monetizing your expertise outside of your job. Second sign for me is with a lot of people I meet, a lot of people who come into my programs, I always say if your employer decided not to pay you this month, this particular month, will all hell break loose? What impact would that have on your finances? And for many people, the reality is that for many people in the UK right now, all hell will break loose, right? It would be a disaster. if, for whatever reason your company couldn't pay you this month, it will be a disaster. So that means you are living from quite frankly, you're living from paycheck to paycheck, right? So that's the second, sign that math isn't really mathing. Um, and so that's another sign that you should probably be monetizing outside your job. The third and final one I would say is that your salary increases, right? So you get a salary increase, you get a paycheck raise, but you still feel broker than the year before. So, like on paper, the salary looks great. Maybe you moved jobs, you increased by 10K, you had a bonus that was maybe 12 to 25K, something like that, right? But there is no significant jump in your lifestyle, right? So, people say yes, lifestyle creep, but I get that exists, but most times, what is lifestyle creep really? Maybe you want to send your kids to better schools. Maybe you want to go on better holidays. Maybe you want to start a charity. You want to give back at church. You want to do more for your community, and you just can't. You simply can't, even though you got promoted, even though you changed jobs. So that's the third thing, where on paper your salary looks good, but in terms of how it translates to your standard of living, it's not that great. I think those are the three, when we talk about the math is not mathing, I think those are the three most common experiences. I don't know if anybody here can relate to that, but I find those are the three most common experiences.
Yeah, that's amazing. I really like those how you broke it down to those three signs, because I absolutely get that. I can totally relate. So the math wasn't mathing for you. And let me know in the comments, guys, if there's anyone who feels like those three signs apply to them, like the math isn't mathing for you, because Tomiwa just broke down what that means. So it wasn't mathing for you. So what did you do next?
Yeah. So I think the first thing for me was, again, the journey to taking the leap wasn't, I just decided and I was like, no, it doesn't work. I'm going to jump. I needed to first of all validate that, I had skills that I could take to the marketplace. And not just take to the marketplace. I know there's a lot of, we see a lot of ads right now online where people are saying, sell an ebook for $40, etc. But if you're a professional, first of all, your salary, at least minimum, you at the very, very, very absolute minimum, you were earning at least 1,500 in your job, right? If you're a professional, I'm talking the very, very minimum. And so for me, I was thinking, I'm going to sell an ebook for $40. How many ebooks will I need to sell to match my salary? So the first thing was validate my expertise, right? What can I package my expertise into something that can be sold for over, 1,500, over 2,000, over 3,000, such that to match and surpass my income. Because I was working in an investment bank and then consulting, so I wouldn't say that I was, earning low, right? I would say that I was quite comfortable in terms of earning potential. So for me, it was important that I could match my salary in like 3 to 4 clients a month, or in a product, in a consulting package where maybe one sale was equal to my entire salary, or one sale was double my entire salary. So that's the kind of thing I wanted to do. So first thing was to validate that that was possible by finding a few clients, right, to serve. And so over a couple of years, over about 3 or 4 years, I started to kind of build up my consulting practice, build up my coaching practice. And then at the point, even from when I started to match my salary, it still took me, I think we've discussed this, it still took me another year and a bit, or another 2 years to then take the leap. But I first of all started to, had a plan and actualized the plan to match and surpass my salary. Saved a bit. For me, the I think that's another place where people get stuck and fear holds them back, where they feel like I need to save the entire, maybe I earn 5K now, so I need to save like 1 year's worth of income first before I leave. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I'm saying sometimes that can keep you, it can keep you back. It can hold you back in fear. Sometimes you don't need to save the entire year's worth of income. Sometimes you just need to be able to validate. Sometimes people quit on savings, right? And sometimes people quit on substance of things hoped for. And I've seen both work out well. The important thing is that you have a plan and you have a strategy to sell. So that was my first thing, to start monetizing while I was in my job, and to start monetizing based on skills I already had within me, things I was already doing at work. So if you
Mm.
think about the fact that your employer is just one client, um, and the same skills that they've hired you for, that they're paying for, another person will pay for, right? In a different capacity, but another person will pay for those skills. I think that's the first thing that people in corporate jobs need to realize.
Ah, that's amazing. So you looked at your employer as one client as opposed to you working for the person. It's like you are your business and that you have one client. And you decided that, okay, I want to maximize my income. The math isn't mathing with just one client. How can I serve multiple people instead of just one person? Because obviously with your employer, the reason why it's an employee relationship is because you have a contract that says you cannot work for someone else.
Yes.
But you kind of change the contract to be like, okay, I want to have multiple people. So tell me, what how would it be? How if someone is working now, they have these skills that they are using for their one client, their employer.
Yes.
They want to start serving multiple clients, right? You know, they want to transition into maybe a business where they can serve multiple clients and make more money, for example. How would they know what skills, what passions? I know you said you validated your idea based on the skills that you already had, but how would we know what our passions are, what our skills are? What do we actually have that we can monetize?
Yeah. I think in terms of monetization, it's either professional experience or personal experience. So it'll be things that in your personal life, maybe people ask you to do already, and you're probably doing it already for free. A lot of people are great, like planners, they're project planners, they're wealth advisors, they are they have accounting skills, budgeting skills, they have ways to help people make money. They have an understanding of how to help people make money. They have an understanding of how to help people improve their health, right? They have an understanding of how to help people improve their maybe personal lives, relationships, etc. When it comes to marketing and sales, one of the things that we're taught very, very early is that human beings pay for three things: things that improve their health, things that improve their wealth, and things that improve their confidence and interpersonal relationships. So if you're someone that can help anybody with that, it is a sign that you have the ability to monetize your skills, right? The second thing is, what can you teach people? Most times we're working in jobs and we ignore the byproducts of our day-to-day jobs. So when I say the byproducts, maybe you're working in a firm and you think, oh, I'm just a virtual assistant. But actually, you have great organization skills, you have great stakeholder management skills, you have great people skills, you have great communication skills that can be turned into a potential new business. So the first thing is just, I would say, first of all, write down all of the things that you do at your role and the byproducts of those things, right? Things that maybe you ignore, right? Maybe you've been sending weekly comms in the office. Probably means that you might be able to be a great copywriter, right? So the first thing is, what are my current skills, right? What are my current skills in my job, right? And then how does that translate into a high value skill that is in demand? A shortcut to doing that is a simple chat GPT exercise. I don't know if people here are familiar with that. But if you literally put all of the things you do at work, it's one of the things, first things I tell my clients to do. Write down 10 things you do at work, and on a scale of, for each of those things, or 10 things that you're even just passionate about, or you know how to do, you like doing, you enjoy doing. Scale of 1 to 10. How proficient are you in each of these things? Put that into ChatGPT and just ask it, can you translate based off of my skills? Can you recommend some high value, in demand business ideas, right? Either business consulting, business courses, business coaching, service based ideas I could do with these skills. That is a great starting point. Of course, it's not going to give you the entire answer, but that is a great place to start narrowing down, especially for people who think, maybe I've worked in corporate for like 10, 15 years. I have all these skills, but I just don't know how it translates into a business. A great place to start is that. In the past, before ChatGPT, how I used to train my clients is, we will write down those skills and together we'll sit with those skills and start to think, okay, what can this look like? What does this look like? And then we'll use Google to try and find businesses that use those skills, right? Or companies that use those skills, and then we'll try and kind of modify that. But now you can speed up the process by just asking ChatGPT, hey, these are my 10 amazing skills. People in my family always ask me to do this. People in my family always ask me to organize this. What can this translate to as a business? It gives you some business ideas. That's a great starting point. And then from there, you have something to work with, which you can then start to research upon. You can go on Google, you can go on Instagram, LinkedIn, and just see who's running businesses like this. What are they charging? And then, from there.
That's amazing. So I hope everyone has gotten that exercise, and I hope that you actually do it. So we list out the things that we do or we like to do, top 10 current skills that we have, and then we put it in ChatGPT and we start asking and trying to see what are the high value skills that we can get from that.
Yeah.
Okay, now when we start seeing these high value skills, how do we know which one will actually make us a lot of money, or can any skill make a lot of money? I know I've seen like dancing dogs make money, but like let's say I'm really great at baking, and it's something that is true. But now I want, and I'm thinking, okay, people always ask me to bake cakes, and this is true. People always ask me to bake cakes. It is one of the skills I'm actually very proficient at baking cakes. I really like baking red velvet. Like, how do I know if that is a high value skill?
Okay. Great. So in that, in that exercise where you're using, for example, ChatGPT. So let's say that was you. What you want to do is first of all, ask you. The first thing you're asking is, I love baking cakes, right? I'm really good at baking cakes. I have a lot of knowledge and skills regarding this particular area. How does this translate to a business? Can you suggest businesses where there is a gap in the market, or niches where there is a gap in the market, that I can offer these skills at a high ticket service or at a high value service? So high value service is the key here, because what that means is it might then say, okay, well, you're a baker. Instead of doing sort of business to customer one-to-one baking, maybe take that baking skill corporate and do for corporate events. Or I can say, look, I know you're a baker, but instead of baking cakes, why not create courses on teaching people how to bake cakes? So there's doing the thing that you're good at. There's teaching people how to do the thing that you're good at, right? And you can make money from either of those. So again, depending on your industry, might suggest multiple different things, right? But for every business idea, the first thing we want to do or assess beyond passion is there a demand for it, and are people paying high value for it? Are people paying high ticket for it? Are people paying, is this something, every time someone comes into my program, the program promise for my program is specifically package your skill sets, personal or professional, into a service that can sell for £1,000 or more. So that is the starting point, right? That you
Yeah.
must be able to sell this service for £1,000 for more, because then that gives me the confidence that when you leave this program, even if you serve 10 clients a month, if 10 clients get into your program, if the 10 clients buy your course, whatever, it's like you're at least you're on track to be able to make 10,000 every month, right? And if you're able to then package that into higher ticket services, where maybe you're able to kind of stack on the value and increase your prices, then of course, kind of the sky's the limit from there. So I think, especially for professionals, what makes me really, really sad is seeing professionals get into a business industry, they're monetizing their skills and they're trying to compete based on price instead of value, all the value that we have. If you're a professional, you have so much to give. You have training, you have your uni degree that you've now spent time on, all of the years in corporate that you spend time on. And so it's a disservice to now start selling. I'm not saying you can't sell ebooks, but it's a disservice to start selling things that are £20, $20, trying to hustle for that next sale when you can really be playing at the top end of the market.
Thank you so much, Tomiwa. So, question. Let's say now I'm in a job, and like as we explained, the math isn't mathing. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe I want to transition to a different industry. I want to transition to, maybe I'm in banking and I want to transition to IT, or I want to transition to something completely different. Um, what would your advice be on how to do that? Because I'm now trying to transition to another high value industry, let's say.
Okay. And is this as a job or as a business?
So either, like, what can I do? Can I transition as a business? Can I transition as a job? Considering that I'm somewhere, I'm in a different field now, and I want to make more money. I'm seeing, based on your questions, I'm seeing that maybe there's not a huge demand. Like, people don't pay high prices for the work that I do in my job. So I'm thinking, okay, I want to transition to something else. So, so what,
Yeah.
what would I do as a business or as a career?
Yeah. So what is currency? Transferable skills equate to currency. So transferable skills, when I say transferable skills, that's why I talked about byproduct initially. So if you go, even if you're changing jobs, and this applies to if you're changing jobs or you're starting a business, if you're changing jobs and you go there saying, oh, I'm a virtual assistant, my job, or maybe I'm an analyst or I was an operations professional, my job was to take minutes in meetings. right? My job was to take minutes in meetings. If you take that to a new job, your negotiation power is not as strong as if you take that to a new interview and say, my job is to facilitate, translate meeting outcomes into strategic objectives, right? My job is to take meeting outcomes and ensure that the stakeholders, carry out, deliver the project, right? I facilitate project delivery through documenting, meet implementable meeting outcomes, etc. Right? So there's two very different things. So it's something we already do when we package our CV, right? You repackage yourself for the new buyer, whether that's a new employer or that's a business, right? That same person, that same operational extra pair of hands in this role can be the next COO in a different role, depending on how they decide to package themselves, right? That same person can be an OBM, so which is what we call a personal business manager for a business, right? I know some operational business managers who, I mean, first of all, their pricing is not even like they're charging. I'm sure you're familiar with that industry. To me, they're in the five-figure range if you're wanting to work with them, right? So they're charging 10K and above to work with them per month, and they're operational business managers. At the core of it, what is the skill that they have? They're able to organize things, document things, right? They're whizzes at administration and systems. Yet the same person with that same exact skill will be in a job earning, being underpaid and undervalued just because they're not able to articulate their transferable skills. So it's really being able to see more value than your employer is telling you. The first thing I always tell people from a mindset perspective is dissociate yourself with what your employment contract in terms of how much you are supposed to earn in that job says, because that job is just one client. Most people, because your employment contract says 70K, 80K, 60K, we can't see above that. So it's like an invisible income cap over our heads that we don't see. So I'm always like, forget about what HR said your skills are worth. That's just one client. So you find other clients and you can determine how much your skills are worth. You can break that income cap.
Yeah, that's amazing. I never thought of it like that. It's almost like a prophecy. Like we pay people in this range to do admin 35,000. And so in your mind, you receive that as I am worth 35,000. And it's
Yeah.
and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But what
Yes.
you're saying is that if you do admin, for example, you articulate what exactly you actually do. And that ties into your last point of writing out the actual skills that you actually do in that job, right? And you're great at organization, you're great at taking notes, you're great at, you know, doing these things, and that could literally translate to a COO or an OBM. So if you want to go into a career field, you could go to a different career industry and be a much higher position if you articulate the skills that you've brought forward. And if you want to go into the transition into business, you could still do that, taking those same skills, but as a different thing. And yes, like operational business managers, they do charge a lot of money, but they help you organize your business and ensure that things are running smoothly. So that is an amazing tip. And thank you so much for sharing that. So, okay, we were still on your story and you validated your idea. You knew how you were going to, you saw the skills that you already had, and you started seeing how you could translate those skills instead of just for your employer to help with other people. You knew that your skills, you were really good in marketing, you knew you were really great in sales, and you now wanted to, instead of serving one client, which was your employer, you wanted to serve many people.
Yeah.
Then you said something. You said something about 2 years. You were still doing this for 2 years. So you were running this new business, bringing in new income, and you were still doing your 9 to 5
Yeah.
for this amount of time.
Yeah.
Can you talk us through how you juggled both, and then how you created that plan to slowly, and that for you the plan took 2 years, but how you created that plan to now transition from one industry to another, even though you use the same skills. And what kind of fears do you think, maybe we'll talk about the fears after you tell us about the plan, because
Yeah.
definitely um
Yes.
Transitioning can be fearful.
Absolutely, absolutely. So for me, like I said, I've been running my business. So I guess to put it into context, I started running the business 2019, right? Um, and then started matching and surpassing my income maybe like end of COVID year, so end of 2020. At that point, I was already like, and so but as soon as that happened, and that's another thing I was just saying, that the minute I started to surpass my corporate salary through my business, I became disillusioned by corporate. Like I realized that, oh, okay, this is just the like you can, you know what I mean? Like you, once you can communicate value, anything is possible. Previously I was still in that, and that's why most times you find people in corporate, they go from, let's say, and this was me, years ago. So when I first started my career, started working in investment banking. Salary was like, maybe I was an analyst, right? Straight out of uni, it was like 37K. And so you move from like 37 to like 42, 42 to like 56, just those incremental, like, safe, just because we're waiting for our employer to tell us how much we're worth. But once you determine that and you're able to communicate value, even before I had left my job, like left corporate, I had moved roles, I had tripled my income. I was now like, I was tripling my income in such a short space of time, collapsing time versus what had happened, the entire time before that. And so one was like being able to communicate value, being clear on what were people buying, right? So in my role, let just to give you an example of translating byproducts to actual products. In my actual day-to-day role, my consulting role, I wasn't focused on marketing and sales. Right. So as a program director, but that part of that role includes selling your work, selling the program, selling the business case, selling, creating a business case, selling it to stakeholders to invest in that business case to build out that program. So that is a marketing and selling skill. But I realized that outside my job, companies, startups, they need advice on marketing and sales, and those guys are willing to pay top dollar for it. So I was like, okay, let me take this skill set that I have in consulting, repackage it into my marketing, because it's what I do at my job. I just don't get paid for that part. I get paid for being a program director only, right? So repackage that and then started to sell my marketing and sales skills to startups, small businesses. And that's where sort of money was coming in while I still had my corporate role. It then took another, let's say, 2.5 years to actually take the leap. And that's where I'll jump into, I guess, the mindset part, which you talked about. So the first thing was, you know, being able to work on my identity outside of who I was as an employee. Most times you meet people and you say, "Oh, hi, what do you do?" It's like party talk, right? Hi, what do you do? Or who are you? In fact, the fact that the first question is usually what do you do is already the reason why a lot of us, we attach our identity to our jobs, right? So you go to a house party or you go for drinks or you go to someone's birthday and, oh, hi, what do you do? Oh, I'm a JP Morgan. And it's like, no, but who are you? Like, who are you as a person? You know what I mean? So that first step was separating that identity of who I am, who does God say I am, right? So I'm a woman of faith. Who does God say I am? Who I am? Who am I in God's eyes? Like, who am I? Who am I? Right? Beyond the investment banking job, beyond the consulting job. So I first of all had to work on that to kind of break up with that identity of, if I don't have a corporate, VP or director, it means I'm not someone, right? So that's the first thing. It holds a lot of people in corporate back because we love that good on paper job. We love to see. So this is not, I'm not, by the way, I'm not anti-corporate, but for anybody who wants to leave corporate, I'm pro you, right? So I'm working with you to kind of get there. So yeah, so that's the first thing. The second thing was I had to be an incredible self-manager. When you leave your corporate role, your corporate role is determined by the forces that be at the top, right? And so your role is predetermined. You get into work every day, you know what you need to do. It's very easy. But when you're prepping to exit corporate, you need to start getting into self-management, which means I need to be able to manage myself and manage results, bring out results when there's nobody managing me. When you're in corporate, if you show up at work, right? If you show up at work, right, what happens is you get paid, you get compensated for that, right? So you're compensated for being at work. You show up for 30 days, so you go to work every single day, therefore you get paid at the end of the month. When you start a business, most corporate people suffer from this. We think time equals money, like time spent doing something, time spent working on my logo, time spent writing emails is what equals money. But it's actually the value you create that equals money. So being able to learn how can I quickly create the value that will translate into money? How can I learn how to sell is a very important skill. That was the second thing I needed to learn because that effectively determines your earning once you go out in business. Whereas in corporate, as long as you're going to work and you're not quitting, you keep any money on the 26th or 27th. So that's the second thing. The third one, which is I guess the hardest one, is to break up with the golden handcuff, right? It is to break up with the gold. That's the hardest one. That means the idea that is not easy. So I don't even want to downplay that, but the idea that on the 27th of March, I'll get paid no matter what, right? Being able to break up with that is one of the things you have to work on. So you have to work on your money mindset, like your relationship with money and all of that, which is something that, Tommy works on, but your relationship with money, that's a lot of work you have to do before you take that leap. So I had to do a lot of that as well. Just being able to, I think that second month, I was like, oof. But then, so you have to get used to that and get used to, again, faith reference here, but getting used to God being the source. When you're in corporate, there's that tendency to think the Goldman Sachs or the JP Morgan is the source, but it's actually God. God just uses those vessels because he can't calm down by himself. So I had to really start to, there's nothing that changes your relationship with trusting God as being on your own, where there is no, I mean, I'm married, so I do have my husband, but the point is that in terms of my income that was coming in for me, after being somebody who had worked in corporate for so long, I had to completely kind of break up with that, and rely on God for my needs and my source of income. So that was the third and final thing. So that golden handcuff, and for anybody who's kind of just maybe considering this journey and your personal faith, one of the stories that really helped was the book of Exodus, right? When, you know, the Israelites were leaving Egypt, right? And that was one of the scriptures that God gave me at the time, which was, you know, they kept on looking back, saying, when we were in Egypt, there was bread, there was this, and they found it very, very hard. Even though they were suffering, they found it hard to break up with that mindset and that experience, which was required for them to move forward. So if you feel called to a business, God has called you to it, that is your promised land. But if you're still tied to almost the old identity, the old mindset, like you're still tying yourself back to Egypt, and that was one of the things that affected the Israelites. So yeah, I think that might be my third and final in terms of mindset.
Thank you, Tomiwa. Those are really great tips. Um, on the same note, what let's say what are strategies that someone can use? Let's say now you want to transition, but you want to transition to a more high-paying career. I know we can still have those those identity fixes like, oh, I'm just I'm admin person, or I'm just this, but you want to transition to a more high-paying professional job, let's say.
Yeah.
Then can we still use those things to maximize our income, or to get promotions, to negotiate our salaries? Can we still use those same tips?
Absolutely. So the tips I share are great for a pivot, and I was going to say this earlier. I didn't get that. I kind of skipped my mind, but I was going to say also the tips I share. They're not, and for me, I think when I was in this journey, I really disliked going into a masterclass or a session, and the person couldn't give me things I could start doing today. It was very vague, so I tried to be very specific. For me, every tip I share is something I've actually done. So I first of all pivoted from investment banking to consulting,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah,
Consulting
tell us
for
about that.
financial services. So that was the first pivot. Then I did consulting for financial services into consulting for almost like startups, fintech companies. And then from consulting for fintech companies and startups, I then branched out on my own. So it's almost been like three pivots using the exact same thing. So going from investment banking to consulting, it was almost like, why are you coming to consulting? You've been in a line industry. I was able to communicate value that, oh, not only was I wasn't just an analyst, but I really understand gaps in the financial services industry, so I'm able to give advice on that. So it's not just my day to day. I went beyond saying, oh, I can do Excel and all of that as an analyst, to being able to communicate that, look, I'm able to provide advice because I'm coming with line industry, like a line role. I'm coming with line role knowledge, right? So basically, having been doing the thing, being your potential clients, I know what's in it for investment bankers. I know why you can sell to an investment bank, sell your consulting services. That was one of the things that helped me get that consulting job. Then moving from consulting financial service, because I was done with that. I wanted to just consult generally, be a generalist. Moving from that into consulting for fintech firms, it was now, how do I sell the existing consulting skills I have, even though it's just for financial services. But I want to get into fintech. I don't want to start from the beginning, right? I think that's always always the pain point for many professionals. I want to start a business, or I want to jump into another career, but I don't want to start from the beginning. I don't want to start from scratch. I want to start from experience. So I'd never taken, I think some people say, well, you have to take a pay cut when you pivot. That's not true. That is not true. All I needed to do was to find out, what did they need in a fintech firm? What are their goals? Okay, how can I sell consulting skills for them such that I'm starting at a higher role? So being able to get to the integrity of seeing beyond your role, seeing how you can sell. We already do it for our CVs. It's just that for our CVs, it's very robotic, it's very rigid. But being able to think outside the box, and also things that you do outside of that. One of my highest paying roles before I left corporate was a program director role. And I feel strongly that one of the things that got me that role, especially in that final stage interview, was I talked about planning my wedding in Nigeria from the UK, a wedding for 1,500 guests. And I talked about being able to manage stakeholders in terms of wedding planning, being able to manage conflicting interests in terms of family members, being able to manage all of that from a different country. And I think that was the selling, that was, at least, sometimes you go into an interview and you know what it was. And I think that was it. So again, sometimes we forget all the things that we do outside of jobs. Even moms, I always say that you're a multitasker. Like, you're an operational, you know, like, you're just so good in operations and all of that, but we forget and think it doesn't apply to my business. It doesn't apply to this new job I want. So I think don't disregard the skills that you have outside your job, or the skills that have come as a result of your job. It doesn't always have to be what is on paper or what you're hired for that you're selling.
Yeah, please. Could I just ask if you just share just a little bit more about how this particular point, not disregarding our skills outside jobs, because sometimes you can go into an interview, let's say you're transitioning from one corporate job to a much higher value other corporate job, right? And
Yeah.
you're trying to see how you can not start from scratch. You don't want to take a pay cut. You want to take a pay rise. You want to triple your income, for example, by moving, but you want to communicate honestly how you are and articulate the value that you are bringing. So if we can use that example again of that admin person who maybe wants to go for a role,
Mm-hmm.
they're an admin in maybe retail, and
Yeah.
they want to go into IT, maybe,
Yeah.
I don't know, and
Okay.
how they can, and maybe they're a mother.
Yes.
They have 4 kids or three
Yeah.
kids, one in secondary school, two in nursery. They
Mm-hmm.
have old parents they take care
Yeah.
of. How can they,
Okay.
really, communicate? And you can make up any other scenarios that they may have,
Yes. Yeah.
hypothetical.
Yeah. Luckily now, I find that this is like the easiest time in our era of existence to repackage yourself, position yourself, because we have so many tools. I'll refer back to this, something like I said earlier on, the chat GPT exercise. When I was doing all of this, you had to kind of sit down with yourself and say, okay, I do this at work, but this company, they're looking for somebody who can help drive, marketing programs, who can help drive sales. Okay, what a person that needs to drive marketing and sales programs, what skills do they need to have? Okay, this is, I might go on Google and just do some research, right? What skills do I need to have? Like, I can do this, I can do this. Most times job descriptions, they're maybe very complex. They can sound very sophisticated. But if you look beyond look at each line and just think, what does this mean in English, right? What does this actually mean? So when they say, oh, manage conflicting stakeholders, okay, it means I need to be able to talk to each different stakeholder, understand what's important to them, understand what's important to this one, and then combine it into a joint agreeable, I guess, consensus or whatever. That's the undertone of it. So at that point, we didn't have ChatGPT. I would have to sit with the role description and just look at each sentence and just think, where am I in this role description? Where am I in this role description? Now that there's ChatGPT, what you need to do is simply write down, I'm a mom of 4. I do this on a daily basis. So I think I'm very good at this. I do this on a week. Can you articulate my skills for me. What is the value I provide? Give me outcome statements that are very reflective of the role that I do and how it will be of value to, let's say, your new industry is fashion, or the new industry you're breaking into is financial services, or the new industry you're breaking into is in medicine. How will all of these skills that I've listed out for you, ChatGPT, how will they be communicated into a way that is valuable to a fashion firm, that is valuable to a fintech firm, that is valuable to a hospital, and it will help you. Like, this is something that this is one of the first exercises that people do before we even start my program. Like, first of all, I need to know what your high value skills are, and again, for the clients you want to serve, or the job you want, the person that is about to employ you, um how does it translate? In the last 2 months, I've worked with, first of all, I mainly focus on business, but sometimes I attract people who are in executive roles. So senior women who are looking to transition from middle management to almost C-suite. And I've helped a particular lady has now landed a head of, a whole department, from being sort of senior manager, so transitioned into then heading a department, just through the same sort of, along with other things that we do in the program, right? So being able to articulate skills, being able to communicate skills to the highest bidder is effectively what you're doing, right? And it's going to work in your business, it's going to work in your career.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Tomiwa. That is gold. That is really gold. And guys, as we're going along, if you could put down, if you have any other questions, please put it in the chat. And if you've had any other insights, put it in the chat. Why? Because you might be blessing someone else. You might have heard something that someone else missed, and we can be a blessing to each other as well. So people can actually, see, oh yeah, that's actually a good point. So the comments that are in this chat so far, I think we've kind of gone through them. The cost of living is not nothing, and tips to maximize income, motivation to get extra. Maybe we'll touch on that, on how to get motivation towards the end. Okay, but I do have another question. So you had this thing, and then you had this business, and you had transitioned to a different career field. You transitioned to a different career field twice, a different industry twice. And then you now decided to transition finally, instead of serving particular industries, you wanted to serve many people in your own business, right?
Yeah.
Then you had a map. You create, how can we create our own transition map, right? So we've kind of talked about transitioning within, the professional field, but now we want to transition to business. You shared that yours took 2 years before you finally took the leap. How can we create a map? And is there anything like minimizing risk while creating this map, or is just risk inevitable and we just have to to just run with that?
Yeah, I think being very self-aware. So you're so right in that last point. For me, I've always been a risk taker. For risk taking, I mean, I'm not an extreme risk taker, but I will take a risk. I will take a risk. It will just be maybe a calculated risk. So in terms of, for everybody who's a professional, if you have work experience, one of the first things for me was, I knew that if it doesn't work, I have my CV. I will go back into corporate, right? So this is where that ability to articulate, skill sets, etc. I worked with somebody else who recently landed a role after about 5 years in maternity. So she went on maternity leave initially, but then back to back, I guess things happen. She was expecting again, went to another maternity leave, so it was now getting back into a role. We started working together in December, and she landed a new role last month. So I think beginning of February. And so initially she was disregarding the entire 5 year process. So she would go into interviews and people are saying, "What were you doing in the last 5 years?" And it was like, "Oh, nothing." Right. Of course, that doesn't communicate as well as being able to. Meanwhile, in the time that she was in maternity, she actually started, I think, one or two small businesses. So she did learn things. No experience is wasted, right? So for me, it was, no matter what, right? If I jump into this business, if it doesn't work, I can always go back, right? So I'll try. So I gave myself a time slot. I said, okay, I'll try for 6 months. If at the end of 6 months is not clicking the way I expect, or my projections don't work out, then I'll probably start to revisit the plan to go back. In fact, that was the agreement I had with my husband at the time. You know, if it doesn't work out, I'll make plans to return. So that's number one. You always have a fallback plan. I think people in corporate forget that, and so that's why the leap feels so huge, because you think I'm leaping out into nothingness, and I'll come back to nothingness if it doesn't work. But you come back to something. You have 10 years, 12, whatever, 5 years of experience. So that's number one, understanding that. Number two was making, having a plan for the actual business. So when I say having a plan, mapping out, okay, in the next, for every quarter, now I go into every quarter knowing. So I work in services, so I'm selling services, I'm selling programs, coaching programs, right? So it might be different for your idea, but knowing how I'm going to, what is my minimum, like what is my what is my minimum every month that feels comfortable to me, and how do I meet that? How can I strategize to meet that on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis? What feels good to me in business? For you might be different. For you might be just the minimum for your bills at first, and then you start to increase that, right? So I always tell people, when you start a side hustle, if you have the intention to quit, even if the first thing you do is you're able to just cover all your bills first. I'm not saying quit then. I'm saying when you're setting goals for your side hustle, start with, don't just have a side hustle to just earn money on the side. I think people always have say that, I'm just earning money on the side. Give that side hustle an assignment. Okay, this side hustle, you're going to start paying my light bill, my council tax. Let's start from there. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to start paying that for the next couple of months. This side hustle, you're going to start paying my, maybe my shopping bill, for anything, any excesses that I have, you will pay that, you will fund it. This side hustle, you're going to start funding our family holidays. This also, give it an assignment. So you start to build up that muscle of, again, training your business. Your business is an entity, it should answer to you, not the other way around. So training your business to, and training yourself to be able to market and sell your business to hit those goals, right? I think it was even you, Tommy, who said to me one time, we had a conversation, that when it comes to money, there's almost like a minimum that everybody has. You may not know it or have identified it, but you have this comfortable minimum that even if you don't do anything, that amount will somehow show up. It will somehow be in your account, right? I think we talked about it once,
Yeah,
where we have like this. I don't know what it's called, but it's like your maybe what your nervous system
absolutely.
thinks. Yes, it's like, this is where my nervous system is comfortable. Once it's below that, I'm not happy, I'm unsettled. So maybe that's what you start. That's the first goal that you give to your side hustle, that within the first 3 months, I want to be at this minimum, right? And then of course you can start giving it extra. Now I want you to match my I want my side hustle to match my current income, and then I want it to surpass and all of that. So I think that was that, being
Yeah.
able to just set those goals and then see how your side hustle does that, see how you're able to work. The third thing is more practical, being able to sacrifice. Sacrifice is the food that success eats. Like, most times we say, I want to my side hustle to be successful, but we wake up at the same time as we were waking up when we didn't have a side hustle. We go to bed at the same time as, something has to give, right? So for me, when I was working, it was my mornings. I'll wake up early, very early, even till now. I'll wake up, and I'm a morning person. So I train myself to be a morning person. But doesn't mean everybody's a morning person. For you, it might be your lunch break. For another person, it might be nighttime. But for me, I was waking up when I was starting work at 8. I was waking up at 5, right? Do the work, commit, do work on my business, give it at least 2 hours of work, right? And then on a Saturday morning again, give it another 2 hours. And I did that for months, and it paid off, right? It doesn't mean I do it now. I still, by habit, I'm still a morning person, but it doesn't mean I do it now that my business is full time. But something had to give for it to be at the level that I wanted it to be. I had to sacrifice my mornings. So I always say to people, if you want it to be successful, you have to sacrifice something. Your lunch break, your Saturdays. You can't say you want to quit and you're still doing the exact same thing as you did,
Yeah.
before you made the decision to quit. So yeah.
Absolutely. Can someone write that in the chat? Sacrifice is the food that success eats. I have never heard that before, but I love it.
It is like it breeds on that. Like, if you can sacrifice something, you know what I mean? Like, your mornings, your time, your efforts, your investment, like, sacrifice something, your commute time. Remember, I used to read, listen to audiobooks, read on my commute time, even things like content. People say, oh, I don't have time to create content for my business. I will create it on the train, engage, send the emails I needed to, and all of that. So, yeah.
Amazing, amazing. Can we also, this is just an idea that came to me. Can we also sacrifice lack of trust? Because many times we don't even trust ourselves sometimes. I don't know if you find that. Like you say, you, I'm going to send out 10 emails tomorrow, or I'm going to call 5 people tomorrow. I'm going to Google XYZ tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do this ChatGPT exercise
Yeah.
tomorrow. Tomorrow comes and so many things happen, and we moved it to tomorrow again, right?
Yeah.
So we don't even trust ourselves. Obviously, we're telling ourselves somewhere subconsciously that, well, you're not going to do what you say you're going to do. So
Yeah.
then when it's time to actually start doing this business, you've already built this muscle of you're not going to do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
So do we also have to sacrifice, you know?
You're so right. Actually, when you put it like that, you're so right that you have to, you have to just, you have to just become that person. Like when I talk, like now, obviously I've been doing this since COVID. Prior to COVID, by the way, I used to wake up at like 8:39, right? I was not a morning person. I just went with the day. And it was just one day that I was like, I'm going to from today, I'm a morning person. And I'll start waking up at 5. But that means, again, systems will help with that lack of trust, right? So that means that from 9:30, anything Netflix, anything shows, I start to tone down on that. So I have to sacrifice the night from the night before. You have to start sacrificing. Most times I'm watching a series, my husband, I'm like, yep, yep. My alarm comes on. I'm like, that's it. No matter how interesting that series is, So you start those systems you put in place. So I'm already in bed by like 8. Like sometimes if it's a period where I'm maybe joining a prayer session, and our clocks have been back, right? So some prayer sessions I used to join that were 5:30 Nigeria, they've been 4:30 here. So I'm making up a bit earlier, which means maybe from like 8ish, I'm already, changing, getting picked. So start sacrificing from the evening before, putting systems in place. So you're right that trust in yourself, you have to put systems in place. Because left to us, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Left to us, the easiest way out is just not to do anything. You have to put those systems in place. You have to have a place, your working space. You may not have an office or anything, but have it. Before I had an office, it used to be the dining, like the edge of our dining table, and that was my workspace. When it's time to do work, I would go there. I wouldn't sit on the sofa with my laptop when I needed to do serious work. So systems in place. Because if I sit on the sofa, before you know it, put on the TV before you know it. So yeah, you're very right.
Yeah, so that I love that tip as well, putting system in place to help you be your best. Maybe it's setting an alarm, maybe it's having a specific end of your table or a specific end part of your room where you actually do your serious work. And every time you get there, you
You got
now
it.
start building muscle to trust yourself that when I'm sitting here, when I'm once the alarm rings, I'm
Yeah,
doing this and I'm doing that.
yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you so much.
yeah.
Okay, if you have any questions, you can put it in the chat, but I do have another question.
I'm still with you. I'm just grabbing something
Oh,
quickly.
no, no worries. Um, in terms of pitfalls, can you share with us what are common pitfalls that, we, what's our common pitfalls that we can, let's say, avoid, when we are transitioning, whether we are transitioning in terms of to a job or to not a job, to a high value industry,
Mm-hmm.
or transitioning from just one client employee employer relationship to business
Okay.
relationship.
Okay. Let me address that of business, and then I'll touch quickly on the professional. For most people who are in corporate, um one of the things that affects us when we start businesses is that we find it difficult to get over the almost the ego of, I guess, how many years we've had in work, how many years of experience, how many certificates. So we find it very difficult to learn from other people. right? We find it very, very difficult. So most times people in corporate tend to have this DIY mentality, which is, oh, I've done this, I have I'm a da da da, I don't know, I have PMP, I have Prince 2, I have da, da, I have a PhD, therefore my clients should understand that. And so you find that when people in corporate start their business announce, especially in the knowledge industry, or when they're announcing their business, they focus on them. They say, oh, after years of 20 years of medical experience, after 15 years of this, I'm starting my business. Or on their website you see all of the certifications, and they focus less on the client, right? Meanwhile, what your client cares about is the solution that you provide, right? So all of the accolades, they're important, we don't disregard them, but you have to really care about what your client, you have to get into the shoes of your client. Most times with people in corporate, we come with this almost like, and I get it, like, because I've been in corporate, masters, you have all of that, but it's very, very different with, when you're talking to clients. So while it worked on your CV for applications, the way you position yourself to clients is very, very different. You have to get to their level and communicate value, you know. So that's the first pitfall I see. I see it all the time. We want to front load how good we are, how much of an expert we are, and we focus less on, we forget the value that we want to deliver to our clients to communicate that, because we're very used to communicating through accolades. That's the language of job applications, right? That's the language of CVs, but it's not the language of clients. So that's number one. Number two is the point I mentioned earlier on when we're talking. I said self-management. You know, there are some days, even now, I'll show you something behind my screen just in a second, but even now, self-management, knowing that, when there's no boss, there's no orga, right? And so it's a very dangerous place to be if you are not careful. If you don't have self management, it's a very dangerous place, because, and suddenly another month has gone by, suddenly another month has gone by, suddenly, and then you haven't been able to achieve what you said you were going to achieve. So again, if you have a side hustle, that applies to you because you're the boss of your side hustle, right? Nobody's checking on your side hustle. So that's the second thing, the pitfall to avoid, where you're not managing yourself, you don't have a timetable. And one of the things I did this year was start having a timetable, day to day timetable for myself. How do I operate on it every single day? Um, so that's the second pitfall. The third one, not learning marketing and sales. Not learning marketing and sales. If you're starting a business, you have to learn how to sell. You have to, if you're a business owner, you're a salesperson. Most times we shy away from sales. We don't learn it. We don't understand it. We don't know how to be authentic salespeople in a way that feels safe and genuine to us. So we avoid it altogether. And if we're not selling, then we have expensive hobbies. We don't have businesses. So you have to learn how to sell. You must learn how to market and sell. Most people in corporate do that thing. Oh, I'm starting a business. I don't want to be the face of my brand. I hear that a lot. I work, so my specialty is professional. So I know, I coach professional. I don't want to be the face of my business. I'm a private person. I'm like, yeah, but you can be a private person and have a public business persona, right? There are certain things that are off limits. I have a public business page, but it is not me. I have a private personal. So you must market. You must market. It is just, you have to market in this day and age. That is how your business will eat, right? No marketing, no clients, no clients, no cash, no cash, no business. That is what it is. That is literally what, every time I put it to my clients that way, that this is marketing, this is your business. If you don't market, nobody comes. If nobody comes, there's no cash. If there's no cash, there's no business.
Mm,
Um, So
yeah.
yeah, that
Mm,
whole idea of, I think, just a last point, that whole idea of, oh well, actually just my side hustle, it's just a thing on the side. I still have my job. You have to have an intention behind why you're running that business. If you have it, oh, it's just that small thing on the side, it's never going to grow beyond that small thing on the side.
mm,
So
yes,
yeah.
absolutely. Thank you so much. Yeah, I love that. I love that also the last point. So it's almost like you actually shared 4 points. The last point is not having an intention. If you always say it's just that small thing on the side, it will remain that small thing on the side. Thank you so much, Tomiwa, for going through with that. I know our time is like is gone. I did have one more question that someone sent me about money in terms of, so you're starting something new. How do you, maybe you start something and you're saying, okay, now you're charging 500 or 1,000 or something. How do you now transition to moving from that decent amount to maybe a bigger chunk of, amounts of money, kind of like a salary negotiation, but also like in a business. I, I know you kind of talked about a little bit about salary negotiation in corporate, because you are articulating what those roles mean and how you can achieve them. So in business, you've started a business, you've already set a benchmark of how much your services are going for, but you want to now move on to, earning more. How can you do that?
So for example, within my coaching program, we have a high ticket training. So that's almost transition to high ticket. What does that look like? And what I teach is that three things that people pay high ticket for. So there are three things people pay for. That was the first part we talked about, right? The wealth, improvement to health, improvement to relationships, and all of that. That's like the benchmark to even sell something that's over £1,000. If you're now transitioning from that into, now you're already selling something that's £1,000, so you're maybe under one of these three things, you tie your business to one of these three things, you now want to transition into selling services for 3,000, selling services for 5,000, selling services for 7,000. What are you doing at that point? What you're doing is, when people are paying for things, it's already met their wealth, health, relationships mark. So fine. When they want to pay for things that are high ticket, you think back to the things that you pay high ticket for, right? In terms of maybe, for example, business class tickets, in terms of maybe, I don't know, hotels. I don't know what people pay. Everybody is different. But it either improves your status, it was very quick to get it, so speed, right? So is it fast, right? Or is it very easy and comfortable? So is it something that you are doing for me? So let's say you say, okay, I'm a tech guy. I know how to design websites, right? So let's assume you created a course on web design for your £1,000 product. Now let's assume you wanted to transition to maybe 3,000 or £5,000. What would you do? Maybe status may not be it, right? But it may be speed and comfort. So what you might say is, I'll design your website for you in a day, right? So that transitions you from I can teach you how to do it, which is 1,000. You can do it yourself, or I can do it for you. So I'm offering speed. I'm offering comfort. I can do it for you in a week. I can do it for you in 3 days. So that's offering speed and comfort, right? For a web designer. So again, what can you offer people that will translate or increase or translate into speed, translate into comfort, translate into status? When you think about everything that people spend money on, homes, we spend money on rent or mortgage, we spend money on private healthcare sometimes when you can't wait for NHS, right? You can't wait, so you need to spend more. So that's speed, right? We spend money on things that are maybe perhaps status driven, like I made reference to the business class, which actually ticks all the three boxes because it's a flight, you're comfortable, and then it's depending on what part of the world you are from. If you're from my country, it's a status thing, right? I don't know, Toby, if you can relate. So, so point is, if it's around those three areas, that's how you transition. That is how you sell value. That is how you negotiate your way to high ticket sales. When you're providing speed, you're providing comfort, or you're providing status, or all three. That's why you find, sorry to interrupt, sometimes with some of the maybe people like event planners or makeup artists or tailors, seamstresses, you notice that their price increases the more sometimes people can attach status to what that person sells, right? That's why you find a makeup artist who maybe is charging $100, but then she does Beyonce's makeup once and then she's $1,000 after, because that's a status thing now.
Yeah, I get it. Thank you so much. That was gold. Thank you so much, Tomiwa. We appreciate you so much. I have taken pages and pages and pages of notes. That a recap would probably be impossible right now to do, but thank you so much. We've talked about validating your idea, whether you are transitioning between careers, or transitioning out of career into, serving multiple clients. And, fear and how to overcome it, the mindset that we need to have to actually, get a, shift from one career to another. We've shared about, and even the mindset to shift into business. And just now, we now talked about pitfalls that that we can avoid. So we know in advance, like what are the things that can hold you back. So thank you so much. I imagine that I've answered all the questions that were sent to me privately. I trust that I have answered all of them because I made a note of them. Guys, I have a request. Can you put down in the chat one thing that you've learned? One thing that you've learned in this last hour that you are going to take forward, or you're going to share with someone else. One thing that you've learned. My biggest one is success is the food. Sacrifice is the food that success eats. Pardon me. Sacrifice is the food that success eats. So let's every one of us put down in the chat something that you've learned. I'm looking for multiple key points so that we can all encourage each other. We can all be a blessing, because Tomiwa has been a huge blessing to each and every one.
After the other for me, oh my God, it's like.
Sorry about that. So, and as we do that, I just want to say thank you so much, Tomiwa. Now, if we want to, so please put it in the chat. I am looking out for your comments. But Tomiwa, if we want to get in touch with you, maybe we want to follow you on socials to see, to just to keep up with what you're doing, or maybe we want to work with you because we do want to transition in career. We want to transition out of creative business. How can we contact you? How can we work with you?
Yeah. So you can find me on LinkedIn or Instagram, Tomiwas daSilva, quite straightforward. And then if you're interested, so this is just generally, but if you're interested specifically in monetizing your expertise, you want to turn it into a consulting business or a coaching business for £1,000 and above, you can find me at 9 to Freedom. And that's, let me just type it because it has an underscore at the end.
I'll type it for you. You
okay.
Can keep talking.
Or you just send it. Yeah, so you can find me at 9 to Freedom underscore on Instagram, and that's where that is specifically for professionals who are looking to package their skills, their experience into a business, into a service, into a coaching or consulting service that sells for £1,000 and above. But otherwise, you can you can connect with me on Tomiwas daSilva on Instagram or LinkedIn.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Tomiwa. So guys, please go onto LinkedIn and connect with Tomiwa. Go onto Instagram, connect with Tomiwa, whichever platform you are on. Why? Because, you want to remember, you want to keep these connections, and while it's still fresh, we want to also grow our network and our connections as well. Okay, so there are loads of comments in the chats now, so I'll just read a few. Making my side gig pay for an expense. Yes, that was a very good tip. Someone said, I will be using ChatGPT to check what side hustle I can embark on from my many skills. Yeah, and I'm sure you've got amazing, many skills. We all have. Sometimes we just don't see it. Identifying skills I have and marketing those skills. Yes. Give your side hustle an assignment. I love it. I absolutely love it. I love it. That's such a huge one. So Joe said, this has been very helpful, really helpful and useful. I'm looking forward to transitioning from one field to another, and I've learned tips to remove figures from my mindset. Yeah, and just apply my skills to match the job. Yeah, translating that role speak to real English, and then translating our skills. And I really love the fact that you gave the example of planning a wedding, planning a party, in your interview, and that helped you show that you can actually manage. And we all do this, right? We all plan birthday parties. We deal with difficult suppliers. We deal with vendors all the time. Yeah, so that was amazing. And that takes, I guess that takes courage. It's also part of the mindset, seeing yourself as more than your job, seeing yourself as more than whatever role that you have been in. or whatever role that you're currently in, and seeing yourself as, like you said, who in the beginning, who God created me to be.
Yeah.
Love it, love it, love it. The idea of using ChatGPT, that was also very good as well. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you, and we thank you. I hope you'll be back again. And
Thank you for having me. This is great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you got some comments in there. You got new fans. Thank you, Tomiwas, you're a star. Thanks, Elizabeth, for organizing the masterclass. You're welcome. Okay, so we're going to end now. And thank you again to each and every one of you who logged in and stayed all the way on to the end. I appreciate every single one of you. Do get in contact with Tomiwas, and I'll see you on the next masterclass, which is actually in a couple of weeks. At the end of the month, right at the end of the month, just before the beginning of April, we're going to have another masterclass. Okay, yes, I have the recording and I will share it. Have a great day. Have a great day, every single one of you. God bless you. You are all amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.